Let's bring in Israeli journalist Amit Segal. He is the chief political commentator at Israeli news channel N12 and writes a newsletter, It's Noon in Israel. He's also the author of a book, about the Israeli Prime Ministers. It's called A Call at 4 a.m. He joins us now from Jerusalem. Amit, it's good to see you. As we see, it appears another missile directed towards Israel there from Iran. To pick up from what Jeremy noted, Prime Minister Netanyahu did seem to shift his tone a bit yesterday when he was addressing the Israeli public, first saying while the U.S. and Israel had set the conditions in terms of their military achievements in Iran over the past 2 weeks, that it was ultimately up to the Iranian people when it comes to regime collapse, saying, quote, "You can lead someone to water, you cannot make him drink." Did Israel and U.S. intelligence fundamentally underestimate the regime's resilience at this point? Just walk us through what you're hearing.
I'm not sure about this, but I would have to explain the strategy and what went wrong, if any. The concept of the war is gripping the regime's throat with one hand and shaking it to its core with the other. Now, the gripping is the raw military force used by, I think, something like 7,600 attacks of the Israeli Air Force alone on Iranian targets. On the other hand, the shaking is those what we called in our last meeting here a week ago surprises, 4 or 5 strategic moves aimed at actually causing this regime to collapse. This part has not happened yet, as far as I understand. So we have a very successful military strikes, as President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu said, something like 120% of what had been expected in the first place. On the other hand, when it comes to shaking the foundations of the regime, this is slower than usual. That's my analysis.
Yeah, and we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth earlier this morning saying that missile production has functionally been destroyed in Iran and that the U.S. and Israel collectively have hit some 15,000 enemy targets in the past 2 weeks. We also heard from Iran's new supreme leader yesterday. I say heard in quotations, Mojtaba Khamenei, because he only released a statement and we didn't hear his voice. There's speculation as to his physical condition and how much injury he sustained in that initial bombing 2 Fridays ago. But meantime, we know Ali Larijani is confidently walking the streets of Tehran. He was given an interview today. Does Israeli intelligence have a clear assessment of who is actually running the country now?
The IRGC, whether Khamenei is alive and kicking or in coma and not even aware of the fact that he is now the supreme leader, it's quite clear that the more extreme part, more fundamentalist part of the Iranian regime is now in office or in the bunker. In this case, it was quite funny to hear just a few minutes ago in the Iranian official news channel that Netanyahu's news conference yesterday was actually an AI because Netanyahu got injured or killed. It takes one to know one. But for me, the most surprising fact is that Ali Larijani, as you said, appeared today in this march to mark the Al-Quds Day, Jerusalem Day, in Iran, while being bombed from jet fighters who actually arrived from Jerusalem. It's very interesting, Biana, to see how Iran gets more similar to its proxies as long as this war goes on. This is exactly Hamas' strategy to actually hide behind those, civilians, knowing that Israel, unlike Iran, would never dare to bomb hundreds and thousands of civilians.
I want to ask you about Axios reporting that President Trump told G7 leaders in a virtual meeting Wednesday earlier this week that Iran is, quote, about to surrender. This is according to 3 officials from those G7 countries who were briefed on contents of that call. Is that Israel's assessment, too? Do they believe that Iran is about to surrender?
I think we have quite a bad experience expecting fundamentalists to surrender. Hamas has never surrendered. So did Hezbollah, and no one expects Iran to actually hand over this, to raise the white flag like Nazi Germany in World War II. I think what President Trump means is that according to the pre-definition set by Israel and the United States, it would be called surrender. Surrender means that even if they keep threatening Israel, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and of course the United States, they will never have the tools to actually make this threat happen. And that's, in my opinion, what President Trump means. Now, it's a matter of, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks before it happens, before Israel and the US fully or almost fully eliminate Iran's ballistic missile industry. Not only the ballistic missile and launchers, but the ballistic missile industry. So Iran will have hard times actually recovering it from the second disaster in less than a year.
That's 2 to 3 weeks, you say, from now. As you see, there is growing pressure on President Trump
Exactly.
to claim victory and leave this war, given the spike that we've seen in oil prices and the pressure that he's receiving here at home. Does Israel believe that the President Trump will stay with Israel in the course of this war if that takes 2 or 3 or 5 weeks?
Okay, so I don't want to mince my words. I mean, as for those daily updates, daily phone call conversations between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, the IDF chief of staff, and the CENTCOM commander, there isn't a single hint that the US is about to stop this war earlier than expected. 4 to 6 weeks, as we've just said. However, since this is President Trump, so I think it's like the old saying: live every day as if it's your last day. Bomb every day the Iranian military facilities as if it's the last day of the war. So this is the way of thinking of the Israeli military establishment. But there is a cautious optimism that this war is going to actually be completed only after the plan, the former plan is to be actually fulfilled.
And as we heard from Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Kane, this morning, he said that today will be the heaviest day of bombing over Iran so far over the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
Let me ask you, before we end, Amit, about what is happening in Lebanon and the fight with Hezbollah. I'm not sure if Israel had assessed that Hezbollah would be entering this war as well, and to the degree that they have an extent with the ferocity of attacks and missiles that they've launched. And now Israel responding, telling a source telling CNN, a senior Israeli official, that Israel, quote, wants to finish the job. I know there are budgetary constraints that the country is facing. This is an election year for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Can he realistically open 2 larger scale fronts at the same time?
So, first of all, I think the establishment understood exactly where Hezbollah is, but the expectations of the public were not met because we were told after the very successful military operation against Hezbollah, taking down Nasrallah, the pager attack, etc., that Hezbollah was taken 20 years back. However, even 20 years ago, Hezbollah was quite a formidable power in the Middle East. It was strong enough in order to disrupt the life of Israelis in the north. So it is not the monstrous terror army that it had been a year and a half ago, yet it's quite a disturbance. And that's why the job will have to be finished. The main perception in Israel is first we take Tehran, then we take Beirut, and we won't have to take Beirut because if Tehran collapses, it necessarily means that Hezbollah is no longer funded for give or take $1 billion a year, 90% of its budget. However, if the war ends when the Iranian regime is still, I don't want to say intact, but it's still partially functioning, Israel will have, in spite of the election here, to go deeper into Lebanon and to actually finish the job. I know that more than half of Lebanese, the Lebanese citizens and the entire Lebanese government fully support it behind closed doors.
Well, they support the elimination of Hezbollah. Obviously, they don't want to get mired in yet another war where their own civilians get attacked and killed. And we see the intensity of that fighting only increase. Also interesting to see whether and when the United States will weigh in on what's happening there as well. Amit Segal, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.